All right, today we're jumping into this incredible story from Hindu tradition. It's all about a god who just loved to play, and a friendship that got so strong, it basically shattered all the rules. You know, we tend to think of divine laws as these absolute, unbreakable things, right? Well, this story flips that on its head. It asks a pretty wild question. What if God's love, his sense of fun, was actually more important than the very rules of religion he created?
So, let's get into it. Our story is all about the deity Shrinathji and one of his absolute favorite devotees, a singer named GovindDas. And their relationship, it wasn't your typical formal kind of worship. Oh no, this was an intimate, daily, and honestly, pretty mischievous friendship.
Okay, so picture this scene. Inside the temple, the high priest, Gosaiji, is lovingly decorating the idol of Shrinathji. But while he's doing that, Shrinathji, the deity himself, is secretly plucking a pearl from his own ornaments. He waits for the priest to turn his back, and then, flick, he nails Govindas right on the forehead with it, all while Govindas is in the middle of singing praises to him. And this is what Govindas would yell when the priest turns around and accuses him of throwing the pearls. You can just imagine it, can't you? He started it. It's just so charming and human. This wasn't some distant devotee. This was a friend complaining about another friend's hilarious pranks. But here's the thing. The high priest, Gosaiji, he didn't see mischief. He saw what's called a Leela, a divine play. He got it. For God to interact with you in such a personal, playful way, well, that was the highest blessing imaginable. To him, Govindas was, without a doubt, the most fortunate man on earth. But this divine game, it was just getting started. And it was about to escalate. Big time. The pranks were going to get bolder, and they were about to push right up against the boundaries of human law, really testing everyone's whole idea of what faith even means. All right, so one day, Shrinathji comes to Govindas with this very strange new game in mind. He says, "Govindas, you will be my horse today." And what can you do? Govindas gets down on all fours, God climbs onto his back, and starts pulling his hair like they're reins. But right in the middle of this, well, nature calls for Govindas. And this is where things get really intense. Shrinathji, totally into the game, tells Govindas, hey, a horse doesn't ask its rider to get off. He literally commands him to relieve himself right there, right then, just like a horse would. Now you have to understand, this was a massive violation of the sacred laws, the Shastras, which had these incredibly strict rules about ritual purity. So, of course, someone sees this happen. But this onlooker, they can't see the divine Shrinathji riding on Govindadas's back. All they see is a holy man breaking a fundamental rule of cleanliness. They're absolutely horrified and rush straight to the high priest, Gosaiji, to report him. So when Gosaiji confronts him, Govindas just says, hey, don't ask me, ask your beloved Lord. He's the one who made me his horse and told me to do it. And when Gosaiji hears this, he's just completely overwhelmed. He gets it. And he makes this incredible decree, basically saying, from this day on, don't complain to me about anything Govindas does. He isn't acting on his own. It's God directing him. But Shrinathji was far from done breaking the rules. And the next incident? Whoa. This one would challenge not just ritual purity, but the deep-seated social and caste barriers of the temple itself. And it all kicked off with a simple craving for some food. So Shrinathji announces he is totally sick of the temple's fancy 56-course meals. You know, the whole 56 bhog. He says he wants some simple dal bati, a really rustic, humble dish. And get this, he refuses to have it made in the super pure temple kitchen. Nope. He tells Govindas, you make it in your little hut and I'll sneak out of the temple to come eat it there. But here's the thing. Shrinathji had another reason for this secret trip, a much deeper one. You see, there was this humble sweeper, a man from a lower caste who was completely barred from ever entering the temple. Every single day, he'd be outside sweeping the grounds, praying from afar, trying to build an image of God in his mind just from the descriptions he overheard from other people. And this was his prayer, so heartbreakingly beautiful. He had accepted his lot in life, but his devotion was just so pure. His only wish was to be reborn as an ant. Just an ant, so he could finally crawl inside the temple and taste the blessed food offered to his Lord. And Shrinathji, he heard this prayer, and he was just so deeply moved by this selfless love. So, as Shrinathji is sneaking out of the temple for a secret meal, he sets this divine plan in motion.
He starts hopping around, crying out like he's in agony, yelling that there's a thorn stuck in his foot. And who hears him? The sweeper. He hears the cries, looks up, and for the very first time in his life, he sees the magnificent, radiant form of his lord. Shrinathji calls out to the sweeper, who is, of course, absolutely terrified. The man protests, "Lord, I'm impure, I can't possibly come near you." But Shrinathji just waves it away. He says, "Those rules, they are made by men." He then puts his sacred foot right in the sweeper's lap. The man can't get the thorn out with his fingers, so Shrinathji tells him to use his teeth. Can you imagine that level of intimacy? And after all that, Shrinathji asks the sweeper to carry him the rest of the way on his shoulders. Just wow. Okay, so this all leads us to the big finale of the story. At this secret feast, all these different threads, the divine games, the broken rules, the pure devotion, they all come together in this really beautiful and honestly pretty unexpected way. So Shrinathji is at the feast and he is just devouring this food. GovindDas is watching, totally amazed. He'd eat one bhakti and then super sneakily hide the next one in his robes. He keeps doing this over and over. GovindDas, being his usual playful self, starts joking with him. "My lord, is that a stomach you have or is it a well?" Then Shrinathji stands up and his robes are literally bulging with hidden food. GovindDas has caught him red-handed. He sees the smuggled bhaktis, looks outside, and there's the sweeper waiting patiently. In that instant, he gets the whole picture. And he asks this perfect, playful, knowing question. So GovindDas, he plays along and starts to playfully scold Shrinathji. He's like, "Wait a minute, you wrote the sacred texts, you created all the rules of purity, and here you are getting touched by and smuggling food for an untouchable?" And God's response is so simple, but so profound. He says, essentially, that these rules, they're for humans. They don't bind him. The rules were meant to be a guide for us, not a cage for the divine. So keeping this amazing, playful vibe going, GovindDas insists that Shrinathji, after breaking all these sacred rules, absolutely must perform a purification ritual before he can go back to the temple. So he basically marches him down to this sacred pond nearby, the Govind Kund, to make him atone for all his sins. And so Shrinathji, he obediently sits down and starts chanting the purification mantras. And just as he's getting into it, GovindDas sneaks up behind him and pushes him right into the water. Shrinathji comes up soaking wet, threatening to tattle on him, but GovindDas just laughs and says he'll tell everyone who the Lord was using as a horse earlier. I mean, think about that. Their bond was so close, so full of love, that a devotee could literally dunk God in a lake. And that really leaves us with this final, powerful question. If all the rules of religion, all the rituals, are for humans, then what's actually for God? This story seems to suggest that maybe what God truly wants isn't perfect rule following at all. Maybe it's something way simpler. Something that breaks every rule in the book, just the pure, unconditional love from a devotee's heart.